He wanted me to know how much he hated me. I'd hide in the closet, hide under a bed. You come back screaming, "You better come out. I'm going to beat you to death." And he said it a couple times to me. "One of these days, I'm going to kill you." And so my half brother just grabbed me and threw me over the rail of this bridge. And I was 6 years old and a non-swimmer at the time. And just out of the blue, he chucked me into this canal. I heard my back crack as the pressure of the water slammed me against this pillar, and within seconds, I blacked out. He goes, "Do you believe in God?" I said, "Yes, sir, absolutely I do." He goes, "Son, you must, because there's no way."
Hello and welcome back to the Almost False podcast, where I interview regular people with incredible stories. Today's guest had such an unbelievable life that we had to separate it in two different interviews. This is part one of David's story, and quite frankly, I am still in shock at all the things he told me. He was miraculously saved on 4 different occasions, and I promise you, you've never heard anything quite like this, so stay until the end, because as soon as you think it's over, it gets even better. Without further ado, here is the miraculous story of David's life.
It was hard. We left North Carolina, and she left my biological father, and we went out to Oklahoma and lived a number of places. But I have some very early memories of really bad stuff. I found out later. My mom admitted to me, and my older sister said to me, and a first cousin mentioned to me, and I already knew that my mom prostituted herself to put food on the table and keep a roof over our heads and clothes on our backs. And I have very early memories of things a kid should never see or hear. And then my mom married, the first male figure in my life as a father. He became a stepdad, and almost immediately violent. He was, quite frankly, a horrible human being. And I knew from the moment I first met him, he didn't like me. And later he proved to me he hated me. And instead of working, my brother, I have a half sister, half brother. I had another half sister who my half brother shot in the head accidentally and killed her when I was just a baby. So I never really knew her. I knew of her, and my mom really spiraled out of control. And that was all happening in North Carolina before we left there. And my mom just spiraled out of control after that. She already had a failed marriage, 3 kids who are my half siblings, then me out of wedlock. And then my next closest sibling gets killed, and she just, her death haunted my mom, and my mom just drank and smoked and spiraled out of control, and met this abusive guy. And so I had very early memories before this, but these memories were incredibly vivid because I'm 4 or 5 going into 6 years old as we were out working in the fields, sun up to sundown. Getting paid by the pound, living in those migrant farm worker camps. And, me as a little white kid in those camps, I got beat up a few different times. And it's this whole thing that nobody likes to talk about, but it was by Black and Latino kids only because I was white. So it just was what it was.
Well, why were you there in the first place? Because you talked about being 5 and working in the fields. How does that even happen?
Well, my mom worked as a waitress. That's all I ever knew that she did. I know she cleaned houses and over the years, and then worked as in-home care years later for people, But at that time, all I ever knew is she worked as a waitress, and I also had in my mind things I'd seen her when I was younger. But this guy was a lazy bum. That's the facts. A lazy bum. So he had us out working in the fields instead of him finding a job, holding down a job, providing for us. And so, that's what we're doing. My brother, my half sister, and me and my mom and him were all out in the fields. I to this day, I don't get it. He had no skills. He was illiterate. I mean, I don't know. Bottom line is that that's how it was. And, being a little kid out there, working sun up to sundown, you break for lunch and then you're back at it. It just, because you get paid by the pound. So you gotta learn to get after it. There's no playing around out there. There's no playground. There's no this, no that, hanging out with your buddies. There's no playing ball. It's picking, cutting, digging. I mean, whatever's in season, you're picking it off the vine, picking it off the tree. And, we're a bunch of places in Oklahoma, California. I remember apples, grapes, peaches, whatever was in season. And, That's just how it is. So it's, you mentioned that to people, and not very many people ever do that kind of work. And, you don't forget it.
So you had a really hard life and nothing about it was normal. And you had something that was even less normal and even darker than what you talked about, which happened at 5 years old. And that was your first spiritual encounter. And that's quite an intense story. So, as much as you can remember, can you tell me everything that happened in detail?
Yeah. Be honest with you, Gabriel, right? Even right now, you asking me the question. It just gives me chills. I don't know how many people get to experience the reality of the darkness that God is saving us from and the things that dwell there and look to destroy us. So yeah, I'm 5. I remember we're living in this little trailer, and I had a pallet on the floor where I was sleeping, and we're all there. This new stepfather sleeping in the front of the trailer with my mom in the bed, my brother and sister sleeping. My sister was on the couch, my brother was on a pallet on the floor, and it's very distinct in my mind. Like I remember a whole setup, and I got up in the middle of the night because I was thirsty to go get a drink of water out of the bathroom. And so of course, the whole trailer is dark, and you can kind of picture like there's drapes over these little windows, and there's a little bit of light coming through one drape in the hallway from a street light outside. So I make my way down the hall, get to the bathroom. And I remember distinctly how I had to, I was small, so I had to pull myself up on the sink and turn on the nozzle on to get water, drink out of the faucet. And I scraped my right knee on the knob that was on the cabinet door on the sink. And so I got my drink, came down, turned the light off, and walked into the hallway. And I no sooner made the turn the hallway, making my way back to my pallet. And in this darkness, something grabbed me. And oh man, just every time I tell this story, I know Dad barely told the story because people get creeped out, but it grabbed me and everything disappeared, Gabriel. Like it was like I was in this world, and it was as if this thing that grabbed me picked me up, and it wasn't as if it did it. It did it. Picked me up, and it was so huge and so powerful. I felt the power of this thing, and literally I was close to the ceiling. That's how tall it was. It had to be tall because I was close to the ceiling of this trailer. I remember seeing in my periphery the window that was up high in this trailer, and the top of my head is slightly above it. And he grabbed me so hard, the pain that went through my body and into my back where he pinned me against the wall. It was immense. And the presence of this thing took my very breath away. And before I could close my eyes in terror, it was so creepy and weird, but it was up in my face, like right here, that when somebody encroaches in your space, like right here, and his very presence took the life out of me, took the breath out of me. I couldn't scream. I couldn't talk. I couldn't breathe. And I saw the glint of his face in the light, and these, I don't know, enormous head, enormous face. His teeth were conical, and they fit perfectly together, and they were pearly white. Like I could see the little bit of light reflecting off of just the outer edges of his face as he held me there, and he got close to me, like he wanted me to know how much he hated me. I felt it. Like I felt the hatred. How much demonic forces hate our very existence. That's all he wanted to destroy me. And here's even as if that wasn't creepy enough, I heard him speak to my mind in a language I didn't understand that was in real time translated, if that makes any sense. Like I heard it and it was immediately translated, and he didn't move his mouth. He spoke mind to mind, telling me how much he hated me, and these words stuck out to me because I heard them again later. I'm going to kill you one of these days. One of these days, I'm going to kill you. And just as fast as he was there, he was gone. And I felt myself just hit the floor. And I covered my hands. I just curl up in a ball, hands over my face, terrified, trying to catch my breath now. For the entire encounter, I couldn't breathe the moment he touched me. And trying to catch my breath, praying it was a nightmare. And then finally I got the courage to pull my hands off my face and there was nothing there. And I crawled. I was terrified to stand up. I crawled as fast as I could back to my pallet on the floor, put my heads up under the blanket. And then finally I remember thinking, oh, because I knew this guy hated me, this new stepfather. I knew he hated me. And this was very on in the relationship, but I just knew it. It's like they say, kids and dogs know. I knew. And so I peeked out from under the covers, but he was snoring, dead asleep, hadn't moved. It wasn't him. And I was just like, this had to be a nightmare. I'm trying to convince myself it was a nightmare. And I just pulled myself under the covers and just laid on the floor and just begged that it was a nightmare. It was a nightmare. Now, the next morning, as much as I tried to deny it, I knew it was a nightmare, and I never told anyone. My arms still hurt, though they weren't bruised, and my back hurt where I'd been pinned to the wall, but it wasn't injured. But then I was like, maybe it was just a nightmare. Maybe it was just a nightmare. And then I looked down, I saw that scrape on my knee from when I pulled myself up, and the knob scraped my knee on the cabinet. And I knew it was real.
A lot would say that this was just a nightmare, but the problem is you wanted it to be a nightmare really bad, but you couldn't. You couldn't come to any reasonable conclusion that this was a nightmare, because the scrape on your knee was part of that exact experience. Was like a few seconds before it happened, so that was part of the nightmare, which wouldn't make sense that you would have it scrape on you the next morning, and you felt the pain. So this was something that actually happened, and it wasn't your stepdad, which he did hate you, but it wasn't him. He was sleeping. So you did have your first spiritual encounter with a demon at 5. And you said that he told you, I'm going to kill you one of these days. And that sentence is so pivotal to the rest of your story, because he did try many, many, many times. And obviously you're still here today, but we're going to talk about these things. But before we get to that, how did this encounter change your relationship with your dad? Because your dad was already pretty violent, was already making you work in the fields. But it's my understanding that after this happened, it got a lot worse. Is that correct?
Yeah, it did. There was some violence. He beat up on my mom, put her in the hospital a couple of times. One Christmas, what few little things that we got, that my mom was working as a waitress, and I think probably still prostituting herself at the truck stops and stuff. She was working off on the side to provide for us, because he didn't work, and not a day. He'd sit at home all day and drink while she was gone. But this one Christmas, he threw all our stuff in a fire in a barrel in the backyard. This place we were staying at, burned it up, threw the Christmas tree in the front yard in a drunken rage, and got to another fight, put my mom in the hospital that Christmas Eve night. But my mom, came to this place. We moved to some new place after that particular Christmas. I remember distinctly, and I think my brother and sister must have been in school, because I was by myself at the house. And of course, I never told my mom any of the stuff that happened and how I felt about him, and what I knew in my soul, like who this guy was. And it just began to manifest itself. And my mom would be at work, brother and sister at school. You invite some friends over, they drink all day. And I remember, I learned about it later, what weed smelled like, and cigarettes and chewing tobacco and stuff. Well, when he get a good drunk on, then he would come through, because I would run and hide somewhere. I just knew it was coming from even before the first time it happened. I'd hide in the closet, hide under a bed. He'd come back screaming. He was a big guy too, screaming, yelling, "You better come out. I'm going to beat you to death. And if you make me find you, I'm going to beat you." And so finally I would come out. I would just step out, and then he would come and drag me out in a circle in front of all his friends. and call out articles of clothing and make me until I was stripped down naked. And then he would say all these humiliating things to me and tell me I was trash, I was this, I was that, and sometimes his friends would join in. They're all laughing, drinking, smoking, and then he would throw my clothes at me and tell me get out of his sight. And after he'd send friends home before my mom would get home. He would come back and find me with that whiskey on his breath and a cigarette, chewing tobacco on his breath, and get close to me. And that's all I thought was this demon. That's what that demon did to me. And now he's doing this to me, grab me, pin me against the wall and tell me, you better not say anything to your mom. If you do, I'll kill you. And then he finally said it a couple times to me, one of these days, I'm going to kill you. I'm going to kill you.
And thankfully that didn't happen, but it's so hard to hear your story because my heart breaks for young you. But thankfully that didn't escalate to that point because he passed away very suddenly. And
yeah,
that's another story. What happened?
Oh, one night we'd moved to another place. And again, I never told my mom any of this stuff. And I'll never forget, we lived in this shack, literally a shack, had no heat. And it was Oklahoma winter behind a graveyard. And I used to go and hide in the broken down cars that were in the backyard and away from him during the daytime. And I never forget, one of these cars had a bunch of old cut up carpet stacked inside of it. And I would hide under that carpet inside that car. He never found me. He came looking for me a number of times. He never found me there. And I would lock the doors once I got in, And I remember him sitting back there once he finally given up, went back inside to drink, and watching funeral ceremonies and wondering. And I remember thinking, I wonder how long it's going to be before I'll get buried here in this graveyard because he's going to kill me one of these days. One of these days he'll find me and he's going to kill me. But anyway, one night my mom came home from work as a waitress and again, whatever else she had to do, put food on the table, and he just hit her as she was taking her shoes off on the bed, and he pushed her back. My mom was that big. He was kind of a big guy. He must have been close to 6 feet or over. And my mom was like 5'4", but he pushed her back on the bed and it was coming down to hit her. And our mom was a scrap. She hit him with a lamp in the side of the head and cut him pretty bad. And he ran and grabbed the car keys and said, I'm leaving. And she ran in the kitchen, grabbed the knife and ran outside. She said she was going to slash the tires on the car so he couldn't leave. But, no, I know my mom. I kind of have my doubts about it, but nevertheless, he met her outside and grabbed her, and she put that knife right in his heart and killed him. And he died right there in the dirt. So, I never shed a tear. I'd seen so much violence and stuff by that point. I wasn't even fazed by his death, except relieved.
At this point, you're still 5 years old. So everything that we've talked about has happened and you're 5 and you witnessed him die in front of you and that didn't faze you whatsoever.
No, I guess, you try to you escape. You escape when you're any person. It's like human nature for us. Bad things happen, you escape in your mind. And, which quite honestly, and in the military, being a police officer, that kind of stuff, you cannot do that, right? You can't escape. You can't say, okay, this isn't happening, or I'm going to go to my happy place. You have to deal with the sooner you deal with the reality, the more you increase your survivability and the ability to deal with the bad guys or whatever. But when you're a kid, you escape in your mind. That's why in my mind, I was always some hero. I remember once, though, it's funny, I just remember this. I remember once I told them, after he beat up my mom one time, I told him, I said, when I grow up, I'm going to be big. I don't know how I ever knew that. I'm going to be big. And when I get big, I'm going to beat you up. And that's when he reminded me he was going to kill me one day again. He said, you won't live that long. I promise you.
And your dad left. Well, yeah, he passed away. But it wasn't the end for you, and it wasn't the end for that demon that said he was going to kill you. Because right after this happened, your mom went to jail. And about a year after that, you had your own first encounter with near death.
Yeah.
What happened? Because that story doesn't make any sense how you survived, but I want you to tell it from the beginning.
Yeah. So we were living with an aunt and uncle up in Northern California. And this place we used to go to and, just hang out by, it was called the Mad River. And it's called Mad River for a reason. It wound very fast, very steep elevations and cold. And we were going across the bridge this particular day. And this was the first, I believe my half brother, who was 9 years older than me, over time was both influenced and even controlled to do the things he did to me by this same demonic force. Here's my belief, Gabriel, is that I believe demons get assigned to us. Just like a guardian angel is, I fully believe in guardian angels. I have to, so we talk more about these experiences, but I believe demons get assigned to us because, as we'll get into later on, this wasn't the last encounter. The first encounter wasn't the last encounter. This encounter wasn't the last encounter with this demonic force who sought to kill me. And so my half brother just grabbed me and threw me over the rail of this bridge into this, very fast moving icy cold river. And I was 6 years old and a non-swimmer at the time. And I remember hitting the water and just blacking out.
How high was the bridge?
It was, my best estimation, probably about 40 feet, maybe slightly more, but about 40 feet.
So he pushed you, you fell down the bridge 40 feet, hit the water, blacked out. What's the next thing that you remember?
The next thing I know, it's like when you come out of a tunnel, all the sound, the light comes back in, and I hear all this yelling. They were my first cousins and my brother and my half sister yelling my name, run up and down the riverbank looking for me. And I was on the side of the bank. I don't know how I got there. I have no clue. But I remember thinking, they don't care about me. They're hoping they don't get in trouble if I die out here. That's it. Because they weren't looking out for me. And I was the youngest amongst this little crew of ruffians. And I remember thinking that. But there I was, miraculously saved. And I don't know how.
Well, I mean, we're never going to fully know in this life what happened. But I mean, to me, It seems pretty obvious that something supernatural intervened because you didn't know how to swim.
Absolutely.
You blacked out in a water that in a river that is really fast, which it would be hard to survive even if you knew how to swim. So I believe something supernatural happened.
Yeah, I do too, no doubt. And had to. There's no other explanation. And there's no physics that's going to save the 6-year-old non-swimmer after a 40-foot, fall into the river, blacking out. There's no physics just going to save that kid and put him on the edge of the bank. I don't know, maybe a quarter mile down the river or more.
Right.
Not going to happen. So, yeah.
Well, that was your brother that pushed you, and your brother was very violent with you. That was not the only time that things like this happened. Can you go through a few of the things that your brother did to you for no apparent reason and seemingly being controlled by this demon that you've been mentioning? Like, what are the things that he did to you?
Yeah, he over the years, by the time I was 10, he had shot me in a leg with a very high velocity pellet rifle, put it literally right next to my leg, and of course, the pellet went in there about 2 or 3 inches into the meat of my leg, which he then dug out with a pocket knife. And he's always begging me not to tell mom, because I think, mom will kill me. Please don't tell her, and I never did. I never told my mom all the stuff he did to me. I didn't tell her about the bridge. I didn't tell her about any of this stuff. And he cut me. I still got scars on my hand where he cut me literally to the bone with a knife on my hand, stabbed me in the back through steel very long steel tip darts while I was walking away and threw them into my back. And when I ran, he ran faster and threw these darts and like baseball style, into my back, burned me 2 different times. When I was about 9 years old, he lassoed me, hung me by my feet, pulled me up in a tree, him and his friend, and left me there. And, I don't know if you know anything about foot snares. Eventually the buzz's going to rush to your head. You're going to pass out. You're going to die. And he left me there. A neighbor came and cut me down. And, he molested me when I was very young. So did a first cousin of mine that we were living with. And, all of this because you don't have protections of a mom and a dad looking out for you. And even the protections of my mom, she's struggling with her own stuff. She's drinking heavily. She's working all the time, trying to put food on the table, living with relatives. And a bunch of my relatives some of my relatives have gone to prison for murder that I grew up with. And my half brother was just instrumental in doing horrible things to me whenever he felt like it.
Well, how did you deal with that? Because now we skipped a few years, but you're 10 and you've already suffered all these things. How did you remain sane?
Gabriel, I don't know. Except that, I think the story of my life is that God had purpose for me. And even in the midst of these things, he put something in me that was a protection, a certain strength, a certain resilience. I've talked to a lot of people over the years and their whole lives have been just destroyed and crushed because of the horrible things that happened to them when they were kids. Like they just haunted them their whole life and thwarted them in every way. And God intervened for me. And I think that is the story of my life. Miraculous protection, not some big hero, not some tough guy. God's miraculous protection of my soul and my life and putting certain things in me that in critical times in my life, I was a fighter on a certain level internally, that wasn't just going to be destroyed,
And it's incredible that you're still here today. We're even having this conversation. And the thing is, we're not even done with the things that happened to you. Hey, I'm interrupting to tell you that we have a brand new merch line that just dropped. 4 new designs are available. Go check them out. They're awesome and they allow you to plant seeds without preaching. Every purchase also helps to support the channel. So if you like what I do here, consider checking them out on unashamed.ca. The link is also in the description. Thank you. I love you. Now let's get back to the interview. You had another similar encounter with death a few years after the first one. What happened there?
Yeah, I was 10. I remember distinctly. And we were living in an area that was both fed and irrigated by the Colorado River in California. Anyway, but we used to swim in the canals, but in certain areas of the canal where the water moved a lot slower, it wasn't that deep. It's literally fed right off the Colorado River. So it was, as the canals, they would narrow them down. That's how they increased the speed and able to push the pressure of the water out into these giant fields. And certain areas, you don't go. The water's too fast. It's too deep. It's too powerful. So you don't ever venture there. When we were walking by one of those, there's these narrow roads that, and between these canals where trucks are driving, people would walk, where then they would use to service these canals. And my half brother and I were walking down that, headed back to our little apartment that we lived in at the time. And just out of the blue, he chucked me into this canal right at what they call the sluice gates, which are steel gates iron gates that they, open and close, to increase or decrease the flow. And then these concrete pillars that the gates are attached to. And he pushed me in right at the gate where the water's the fastest, the deepest, and it's stepping down to even go faster. I got sucked down and pinned across this concrete pillar, literally backwards. In other words, you've been this way, but this was backwards. I heard my back and the bones on my back crack as the pressure of the water slammed me against this pillar and I couldn't get off. And within seconds, I blacked out. And I came to again, I don't know, another quarter mile or more down this canal, maybe even further. And there was my brother running up and down the canal, yelling my name. And I remember, I don't know how I got there. I'm up on this very steep bank of this canal. It's got busted bottles and glass all over the place. And I don't know how I got there. Like, how did I even get here? And there I was alive, and again, I hear my brother yell my name. I'm like, he's just afraid that when he goes back and tells mom I'm dead or he couldn't find me, he was just going to say I fell in the canal. And I did. Over the years, I just made up stories, to my mom about the injuries and different things that he would put on me. And, oh, I fell this, I did that. Oh, I cut my hand on a plate in the sink or, whatever. And I just made up stories so my mom wouldn't kill him. Because my mom had killed people before, so I believe she actually would kill him, So
there's no way that this happened by chance. There's no way that you're that lucky.
No.
I don't believe it's a rational thing to say that this was luck. It happened twice, and the 2 times you blacked out and you couldn't swim. I don't know at 10 if you were able to swim as a 10-year-old, but your back cracked and you were disabled at that moment. There was no way you could have swam through that. And you wake up on the bank, just miraculously saved. I don't have any words. I don't even know what to say.
Yeah, I don't either, brother. God saved me again. And you saved me again, And, it's another prime example. Like, just like if there wasn't enough examples, and something I don't think we even talked about before just suddenly hit my mind that when I was 17, I bought a motorcycle and I worked full time in high school. The whole time I was in high school because we were poor. I couldn't afford anything. Had to stop playing sports, everything, because my mom said, we can't keep food on the table. You need to work. So I did work full time and I bought a motorcycle so I could get to and from work, And I was waiting to make a left-hand turn. Of course, I had gotten off shift. It's like midnight, whatever, in Las Vegas. That's where we were living at the time. Waiting to make a left-hand turn, blinker on, the whole thing. And then I hear this. And I remember, man, for a motorcycle rider, it's like one of the worst things. And I've been riding motorcycles since about 15. I go to look in my mirror and boom. And I got hit from behind by a taxi cab at 40 miles an hour. And, there's a whole, how everything slows down. There was all this stuff going on. But the long and short, you talk about God protecting you for your whole life. And there I was again. I got launched across 3 lanes of traffic into the desert. My leg first wedged inside the saddlebag. I had these, bags on the back where you put gear. And that my leg hit it so hard, it broke it open. My leg wedged in between that on the bike. The bike got launched forward, obviously, and it was a big bike, big, heavy bike. And when the front wheel turned in it, it's called end over end, it catapulted me, whipped me by my leg across 3 lanes of traffic into the desert. I remember seeing the cars below me as I flew through the air and I hit the desert, just a pile of dust. Well, guess what? Paramedics weren't that far away. There was a guy following me on a bike just like mine who was an EMT, got there, helped me. But the bottom line is this. There's no way, no how you get to the hospital, still in a lot of pain. Like I thought my leg was ripped off my body. And by the time they get you to the ER and they x-ray you and do all these things, not a broken bone, some road rash. That's it. That's it. And guess who I cried out to the moment that car hit me? Lord Jesus, Lord Jesus, Lord Jesus. I started praying. In the middle of it, I remember saying it out loud, Lord Jesus. And he saved me again. There's no way.
I had no words, but you took the few words I already had.
And the motorcycle patrol officer who came to take my incident report at the hospital walked in. He saw me sitting up in bed. He thought I was going to be a mangled mass of flesh. He saw me sitting up in bed talking to the nurse, and he walked in and took his helmet off. He was a motorcycle officer. He said, "Son, let me ask you a question. How are you doing?" I said, "Sir, good." He goes, "You got any broken bones, anything?" I said, "No, sir, just some road rash. I'm still in some pain. My leg still hurts. I can't really put my weight on it, but they said it's not broken." And he pulled up his pants legs. "Let me show you something." He pulled up his motorcycle pants, like those kind of puffy motorcycle pants back in the day he used to wear. Pulls them up. He's got this giant scar from his hip all the way down to his ankle. He said, "A lady hit me at 15 miles an hour. My leg is held together by plates and pins and screws, a whole bunch of them. And I almost got killed. This guy, he said, we got it. This guy hit you at 40 miles an hour minimum. And here he goes, do you believe in God? I said, oh, yes, sir. Absolutely. I do. He goes, son, you must, because there's no way. And so it just solidified to me, like, man, the Lord was looking out for me again, and just miraculous.
Okay. I mean, we have to move on from this. I don't even know how to do it because I've never heard a story that incredible before. And I interview people all the time, and I hear people all the time, and I listen to stories all the time. This is totally miraculous. But I want to go back in time a little bit because that incident happened when you were 17, you mentioned. I want to go back to when you were 14, because we talked about all the things that you suffered in your childhood, the times that you almost died, all the pain, humiliation, all of that. But you didn't struggle spiritually until you were 14, or at least not as prominent. But when you got to 14, you started having like very intense demonic dreams.
Yeah.
Can you explain what they were like and where that led you?
Yeah. We were living in this trailer park in the worst part of town, Las Vegas at the time. I had another stepdad in my life, or he was actually a really decent man and a hardworking guy, tried, providing for us. And anyway, but yeah, I was 14. I started having these dreams, and they would always begin in that place, Gabriel, between asleep and awake. There's this zone. I believe it's a spiritual zone where things happen. I don't know why, where visions happen, where it's like this space. I don't know, but all I know is that's how it began for me. Like I would begin to drift off to sleep, and then out of the darkness, I knew him. I knew him because I first saw him when I was 5, and I knew him in the fiber of my soul. It was that same demonic force, demon. And he would lash out at me from the darkness. Like there was this space of light where I was. And he would just dip in from the darkness. And I saw that outline of his face again, those perfect pearly white conical teeth, huge. And these claws, I'll never forget him. Like they were like almost like knives, and these ginormous, like muscular arms lashing out at me. And it's hatred for me. I felt it again, and I would startle awake, and I was terrified to fall asleep. And so sleepless nights and paranoia and fear began to plague me. And then these words like, you have no hope. Look at where you live. These people don't love you. Look at all the horrible things they've done to you. You have no future. All these great thoughts you have in your mind. Oh, so you're going to be some great guy. You're going to do some great things. No, nobody like you gets to do anything great. You're going to be living just like this and worse. You might as well kill yourself. If you kill yourself, the pain will stop. Hey, if you kill yourself, then they'll know. Then they're going to know how horrible they treated you. Then they're going to be sorry. Then you're going to teach them a lesson. Day after day after day after day, they just begin to plague my mind. And I kind of at a certain age grew up learning how to shoot a shotgun and fishing and that kind of stuff. I loved being outdoors, and I loved hunting. I loved fishing, because especially on my own, like I got some solitude. And I used to camp out in the desert. Well, this is a different time. My mom and my stepdad would let me do it. And one Christmas, they even bought me some camping gear. They literally scraped and saved because they knew how much I enjoyed being outdoors and climbing the mountains, do all these things. And so I had the shotgun, 12-gauge shotgun, and I began to, first I started practicing jumping out of bed, loading it very quickly, because my mom didn't want to load a gun in the house, because of what happened to my next closest sibling, get shot in the head and killed. And so I would, in the middle of the night, I'd jump up, or if I was startled, I'd grab it. And it happened a lot. I'd be startled out of a sound sleep with these nightmares and crazy thoughts and dreams and stuff. And so I would grab my shotgun and load it and rack it and just be ready. And I believed somebody was going to break in and kill me. I was just like, man, just horrible. And so, some would say PTSD probably from all the stuff that had happened to me and been done to me. And so as I began to hear these thoughts about killing myself, I began to believe them. I had no hope. I was never going to do anything in life. I might as well just kill myself. So I began to practice taking my shotgun and putting up under my chin. And I'll never forget the first time I did it, I pulled the trigger with my thumb, pushed it back, click. And then these words in my mind, see, just that easy. Then all this will be over. And all the thoughts again, then they'll be sorry. Then they're going to know how badly they treated you. Then you're going to teach them a lesson and all this pain will stop. You've got no future anyway. Just be done with it. And I practiced that a few different times. And then I finally said to myself, I don't know if it was me. I had to be demonic influence. I just said, one more bad day. One more bad thing happens to me. I have one more bad day. I'm doing it. I had made up my mind. And that was that.
And what happened after you made that decision in your mind?
It was probably the very next week or so that we got invited to this little church not too far from our where we were living. And I had this encounter. And I just will never forget, like, the guy who was up up on the stage of the podium, preaching, teaching, just completely faded as I sat with this Bible. And quite honestly, I did pretty well in school. I was a fairly smart kid and I was a good reader. And I could read and understand the King James Bible. And, to my mom's credit, I will say this. As a number of times over the years as a little kid, she had us in church. She would take us to church. Not all the time. Of course, a lot of bad stuff in between that we were never allowed to talk about. You never talk about the bad times. That's not allowed in our family. You're right. That's how it was. Don't ever talk about anything bad. But she had us in church. And I remember hearing the gospel. I remember listening to preachers and understanding what they were saying. I believe that's something else the Lord put in me. My mom asked me, so what'd you think about the sermon? What do you think it meant? And I would tell her. She just looked at me like, oh my gosh. No, I understand what he's saying, And so there I was. Everything faded out, Gabriel. Everything faded. And I sat with this Bible. And all these words came to life in my mind and my soul about God's love for me. And had really nothing to do. I'm trying to remember exactly how it was. I think there was a flyer and it maybe had the Roman road, the gospel. And I quickly began to look them up. I was like, I figured out how to look them up. I found the books, table of contents, and I looked these things up about how the Lord died for me, how he gave everything for me, and how much he loved me, and that nobody could take me out of his hand, and I'm his forever. And all that the Father gives me, I will never cast out. And I just was like, what? Like, I had never felt of value. I had never felt of worth like that. Like, what? Wait a minute. He gave everything for me. He gave everything for me. He rose again. Has he been with me all this time? Has he been looking out for me? And the words just came to life.
And it was the first time that you felt love, you told me. Through all the things that you had in your life, it was the first time that you felt some kind of love, some kind of person loving you.
Yeah, I knew my mom loved me, but, she was also violent. And, she threw beer bottles at me when I was, it was like 10 years old, was I guess 10, 11 years old, throwing beer bottles at me and hit me with beer bottles on my head. And he'd call me a lousy so-and-so, wish I was never born. and again, I was probably just a reminder of a failure in her life, a horrible time in her life, you know, and the death of her other child and, the failed relationships and violence, all these things. I was just a reminder, to her, I'm sure at times, especially when she was drinking. But so I knew she loved me, but she didn't love me like that. She didn't give her life for me. And the words from God's word, just those who the Father has given me, I will in no wise cast out. And man, all I knew is it just impacted me so powerfully that I had to go to the altar. I didn't wait for an altar call. I just went. I don't know what was going on anywhere else. All I knew was I had to go to that altar. I had to get on my knees. I had to reach out to the Lord because I had the sense and the clarity in my mind of how He had been with me. And now I had to reach out to Him. And so it was overwhelming grace. There was nothing else for me. There was no, look, I understand how people, scripture's tough, but people say, you have a choice. Lord presents the salvation to you and you can say yes or no. For me, it was overwhelming. It was irresistible grace. There was nowhere I could go but to Him. And thankfully, there was no choice to make. And I got to that altar. I just started crying out, "Lord, please forgive me. Please help me. Please accept me. I see you. I understand. Please save me." And it was like this warm liquid light filled me and was poured from the top of my head to the soles of my feet and my soul, washing away all the filth, all the pain, all the suffering, all the torment, all the fears. And like a 100-pound rucksack got released from my back. I didn't even know I had on top of that. And that was just tears just streaming down my face. It was so powerful, so joyful, so bright. I can't barely describe it. I can't describe it. And then I remember at one point I looked up, I felt someone next to me. I looked up and there was my stepdad standing there with his hands up, tears streaming down his face, then kneeling down next to me. And he was saved that same night. And the Lord saved my soul that night, and He saved my life because I was one bad event, one bad day from ending it all. And, I look at it now. It's like we're talking like how many times I should have died. How many times I should have been dead, could have been dead. This demon did his best to use other people to destroy me. Couldn't. So now he worked hard to get me to destroy me. Mm-hmm. And the Lord said, that ain't happening. The Lord said, not so much. That's not happening.
That's incredible. Your life is filled with miracles and supernatural encounters. And this is a crazy story I've heard. And I've said that to a lot of people, but I think that's because stories get crazier.
Yeah,
it's amazing. And I want to ask, how did your life change after this encounter? Because there must have been a significant difference after.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I had a sense of worth. There were still struggles. Don't get me wrong. There was still depression. There was still darkness encroaching upon me. But what I will say is I was on fire. I was on fire for the Lord. I wanted to tell everyone, you start a conversation, I'm going to work it around to the salvation of God for you, that He's gave Himself to save you from these demonic forces in hell. And, all my friends, people in our trailer park, my friends, moms and dads, I'm witnessing to them. I'm getting some of my friends to come to summer camps with us, and some of them were saved there. For the first time in my life, I realized I could sing. It had been like a little secret of mine. I used to sing in my pillow in my room. And then one night, the music director at our church heard me singing because I wasn't too far from his piano where he was playing. And he was like, "What? And then next thing you know, I'm the lead in the Christmas play and I'm singing solos, and my family's shocked that it showed up, some of them not saved. Um, I had an uncle who says that he came to the Lord, and I'd been praying for him since, actually since before I was saved, I was praying for my uncle to get saved. He was, it turns out he had his own struggles, but nonetheless, like the Lord began to use me, and I can't say that I've, been all that great of a follower of Christ. There was, again, some years after my time in the, when I first joined the military, I got away from the Lord, but he never let me go. He never let me go. He is faithful and true when we are unfaithful and faithless and full of lies. And he is the one that sustains us. And he never did let me go, just like his word said. And no one can take you out of my hand. And praise be to God for that, because we would botch it in every way. If we could, if I could just destroy my salvation, I'm sure I would have found a way. That's all I know, is that the Lord never let me go. So I don't know how many people were saved because of the Lord's work in my life. I know my stepdad, when he saw me go down, he told me I couldn't. Just seeing you go just changed my heart in the moment. I had to go down. And my mom, told me years later that God's work in my life and the things that he's led me to do led her back to him. And I believe my mom and my stepdad are both in heaven now because the Lord was able to use me in some small way to impact them.
It's beautiful, and it's very heartwarming because of how much you had to suffer through in the beginning. And it makes it so much sweeter, the fact that you were able to obtain that after, and to get that hope and that sense of worth. And like you said, you weren't perfect. And we're going to talk about your time in the military and all the other things that happened to you, because there's a lot of them in spiritual encounters. We're going to talk about that in part 2. But to end this episode, if you had to talk to somebody, young or old, that is in a position like you were in, that is thinking about taking their life, or that feels like there's no hope and it would be better if the world didn't have them in it, what would you tell them?
I would say that don't listen to those demonic, dark lies. God has a plan and a future for your soul, for your life. Those are all lies. Satan wants to destroy you. These dark, demonic words that are coming into your mind want to destroy you. But God has a plan for you. Christ wants you in the palm of his hand, and there's no place better that you could possibly be for this life and for eternity. So seek after God. God's word says, if you seek me, you will find me when you seek me with your whole heart. And that's his promise. And everyone who calls on the name of the Lord shall be saved. Call on the Lord, turn from that darkness that seeks to destroy you, because there is hope, absolute hope. God has a future and a life for you. As it was to say in Jeremiah 29, the Lord says, I know the plans I have for you to bring you hope and a future, not death and darkness. And and Satan wants to end that for you, but that's all lies. But God has hope and brightness for you in your life. And reach out to him. Turn from that darkness to the Lord, and he will save you, and he will be there for you when no one else is.
Thank you for watching part 1 of the interview with David. If you want to hear the beginning of this conversation, head over to Locals. The link is in the description. And if you're watching in the future, part 2 is already out, so just click here. But if you're not, it'll be coming out soon. So subscribe to the channel to make sure you don't miss it. Have a good day. Stay blessed.